thanks so much for inviting me here, and it's really an honor to be among all of you. All of you are professors and experts in your own rights. Some of you would have a lot of research background as well as teaching experience, as well as working in corporates, so on and so forth. So I'm very happy to be here, and I'm just going to talk today a little bit about three variables. The first variable being ecology, and we usually talk about the environment, not ecology. And I'll quickly explain what is the difference between the word ecology and the environment. The second variable I wish to talk about is equity, or rather the lack of it, which is inequity. And again, there's a difference between equality and equity. I'll come to that too a little later. And then I will connect it all with the economy. What is the reason that we are going to do these connections? We hear every day when you wake up in the morning, at least I've been hearing the word climate change, at least in the media or the radio or the TV or the newspapers, all the time, incessantly, 24 hours. And we're quite sure that the climate change is happening because of CO2 emissions, by greenhouse gas emissions, by issues which we have created in terms of pollution and depletion of natural resources, so on and so forth. But how does it all connect to the economy, and how does it all connect to the equity part of it, is what I will essentially dwell upon. I would like to have this not as a monologue, but it could be a discussion. So if you wish to stop me somewhere and say something from your experience, or wish to point out something, please do that. Just simply start your mic and start talking. You don't even need to raise your hands or whatever, right? Let this be as a free flow debate. I'd much appreciate that. Okay, right. So the way I'm going to talk today is this. This is going to be the flow. I will be talking about four things. First is, I will take you back a little bit into history, into the evolution of trade in human history. Right from ancient man, from hunter-gatherer till today, modern human beings sitting in front of the computer and talking to other people all across the world. The next, I'll talk about how the modern economy or economics is structured. The third part, I wish to talk about the market failures. And from understanding of the market failures, I will go on to connect them with ecological issues and equity issues. And finally, a little bit about sustainable development. I'm sure a lot of other speakers would have talked about sustainable development, but all I'm going to do is connect it with what I've already spoken, the first three parts of it, and then we will try to wrap it all up. So that's the scheme of things which I've planned for today. And I hope I'm able to give you some sort of a better understanding through this session. Right. So if you look at the evolution of trade in human history, let me take you back a long way to about 13 to 15,000 years ago. Let's say around 15 to 20,000 years ago. That's when the Homo sapiens had already started throwing their weight around, literally. And they had already harnessed the fire. We had the capability to light a fire, to douse a fire. Remember, we are the only species on the planet who has this capability. No other species on the planet can light a fire. And that was a huge evolutionary advantage to humankind, that we were able to harness fire. Therefore, whenever there is a fire in the forest, all the animals will run away from the fire. But it is only human beings who can stand there and not be afraid of it and douse it and do things with it. And thus, this indifference to fire has helped us to make use of fire to our advantage. And one of the greatest advantages was cooking food, right? Before this, this was about 2 million years ago, we were able to harness fire, is what was thought. So it were the ancestors of the Homo sapiens, which were the Homo habilis, Homo ergaster, and many other Homo species which are no longer in existence today. But we're talking about Homo sapiens. We're talking about our ancestors, our real ancestors. So Homo sapiens, once they were able to harness fire, they were able to go out and gather food. So we were at that point of time what is called as hunter gatherers. Most of the times the males of the group of the tribe went out and hunted, and the females stayed at home and gathered. They gathered fruits, they gathered twigs, they gathered leaves, they gathered stuff which they could eat, tubers. They could round up the children, they could do all these things. So hunting gathering was the longest period in human history. And during this time there was no commerce, there was no trade. We were doing things for ourselves. I went out, saw a nice feather, took it up, picked it up, put it in my cap. I went out, picked up a nice fruit, brought it back home. I saw an egg lying, I picked it up and brought it there. I killed a couple of animals, roasted them over fire, and we all sat and ate. There was not too much of exchange which was happening in this time. But as human societies progressed, we were living as hunter gatherers, we were living a nomadic life. We were moving from one place to another, and that imposed certain restrictions. There were conflicts. If my tribe went into your tribe, then we would probably have a conflict, because there were limited resources, and when those resources got over, we had to move on. So a nomadic lifestyle was imposed upon hunting gathering societies, human societies. The next stage is we had a lot of food for ourselves. We could store some food. Remember, we could not store too much food. We could store for about 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. That's all. If food started rotting, you can't keep fruits together. You can't keep raw meat for a long time, and therefore we could not store food. But when we gathered enough food, we had a little bit of surplus things which came out. So we perhaps saw a nice, lovely red stone, and I wanted to exchange it with somebody else who wanted it. So, in that manner, started the first exchange in human history, which is the barter system. And barter system existed for a very long time in human societies. So there was something which I could do. I gathered fruits, and I had a lot of fruits for my family, and I wanted to exchange them with something else. And you can build a boat, and you were able to build a boat with a lot of wood, and I wanted to exchange your boat with my fruit, because I didn't need so much fruit and you didn't need one more boat. So we made an exchange. There was somebody else who came with a lot of eggs which he had, and he could build somebody else could build a house, and they exchanged the way they built a house with eggs which somebody else had. So barter exchange was something which was a huge social benefit. It was a social good. And again, we lived in the barter economy for a very long time. The history of human societies goes much, much beyond 300 years, when Adam Smith formed the modern economy. We are talking something about 15, 20,000 years ago. After barter economy, we discovered something for ourselves, which was another giant advantage for the human race, and that is agriculture. Before agriculture, we were able to domesticate a few animals. We could domesticate the wolves, we could domesticate the dogs, the pigs. Much later, the horses, hen. We realized that some animals are quite happy staying around human societies, and they can give us something. So we started domesticating them. After this happened, we also realized that there were a few species which can grow back. So we ate a fruit and threw the seed, and the woman of the house saw that that seed had now grown into a tree. And fruits were the first things in agriculture that we realized that we could do something with it. And we started developing agriculture. Very quickly, we realized that grasses are extremely fast growing, and they serve a lot to human societies in terms of grains, in terms of food stuff, and we could do that. But grasses and the grains which the grasses get cannot be eaten raw, they have to be cooked. So we had to develop the art of cooking first. And as we did that, we realized that agriculture is indeed a great form for food gathering. Remember, before agriculture, we had to roam around the forest and hunt and gather. That was a very laborious lifestyle. It imposed a lot of difficulties and challenges. There were wild animals, there were our predators. We had no defense system. We just had fire with us, and it was not an easy life. Once we developed agriculture, two very important things happened. The first important thing was that we could we were locked to a piece of land. If we grew something today, if we planted something today, we had to wait for 3 months, 5 months, 6 months for it to grow and give us the fruits. So we were locked to that piece of land. Before that, we were nomadic. But after agriculture, we started staying in one place. And that is when the city started growing, the agriculture started developing, the civilization started growing, so on and so forth. And the second very important thing which happened after we discovered agriculture was something which is extremely important in modern economics. And that is if somebody can tell, please go ahead. What is that thing which agriculture gave us, which is important in economics today? Any guesses?
Food.
Sorry?
Food, sir.
Yeah, of course, food. We are talking
Means
about
to
food, right?
money.
No, agriculture didn't immediately give us money, but it gave
Means
us,
to exchange something.
yes, but the most, you're not wrong. You guys are not wrong. But what it gave us was this: surplus.
Certainty.
Surplus food.
Yes, yes.
Most importantly, when we were hunting gathering, there was no surplus food. We gathered as much as nature gave us. We hunted as much as nature could give us. Only after agriculture could we produce food not just for today, but we could produce and store it for 3 months later, for 6 months later, for 1 year later. Agriculture, one person engaged in agriculture could suffice the needs of 50 people. We could grow so much in agriculture. And this surplus is going to be extremely important in economics, because we can now exchange this surplus much better. Earlier, we were only exchanging the fruits of hunting gathering, but now after agriculture, we can exchange surplus. Now, I have all these grains in my house and I don't need so much grains. I just need a supply for 3 months. So I can exchange these grains with somebody else who will exchange it with something they want and something I want. So exchange started increasing after agricultural output increased. Agricultural surplus, agricultural surplus is now actually going to give rise to the modern day economy. The other thing which happens is that for the first time in human societies, there was a concept of, because of agriculture, there was a concept of, any guesses? Because of surplus, what does surplus mean?
Excess food.
Yes, excess food, which means wealth.
Yeah.
I have excess grains. I have excess food, which means I have wealth. I have the power to exchange that excess food with something else. So Ram has got something and I've got a lot of grains. I can exchange it with Ram. Therefore, when surplus was linked to agriculture, when wealth was linked to surplus and surplus was linked to agriculture, what does it tell you? What is wealth directly linked to?
Property.
Yes, the land. How much land do you have? So if I have 10 acres and Ram has got 5 acres, then I am wealthier than Ram. Right? So the concept of an egalitarian society during hunting gathering started breaking down when agriculture came into play. When we were hunter gatherers, we did not own land, we did not own nature. We took whatever we wanted, went ahead, somebody else came, reaped whatever he got, went ahead, and life went on. In agriculture, not so. We started producing surplus from the earth, and this surplus gave us the power of increasing our wealth. Therefore, wealth from that time on was linked to the amount of land in your possession. And as surplus started increasing, it became very difficult to keep the barter system on. Remember what I said about barter? About barter system, I exchange whatever I have with whatever you have. But that requires two conditions. One is there should be a coincidence of wants. If I have excess eggs and Giant has got excess milk, I don't want milk, but Giant wants eggs. Exchange will not take place between Giant and me. So I have to find another person who wants eggs and someone who wants that. So coincidence of wants is very important in barter, and it gets very, very difficult. What was an easier way to do is have a currency in between. So now, even if Giant doesn't want what I have, but I want what Giant has, he can pay me in a form of currency which I can store and exchange it with Ram, or I can exchange it with Narayan or somebody else. Right. So currency actually eased trade. Currency helped improve the ecosystem for developing trade and commerce. And after that, from that point on, all of us sitting in this room right now are all involved not in hunting and gathering, but generating currency for ourselves. Right? Throughout the day, we go out and work. At the end of the month, we earn currency and we are able to exchange it with whatever we want. And that is become wealth today. So, for a very long time, again, we had these forms of currency, and these forms of currency came. Then came colonization. I'm actually fast forwarding you, right? So I'm not taking you through the entire history of human evolution, but I'm just showing you some important steps. And one of the most important steps when we are discussing about trade and commerce and evolution of the economy is colonization. Around the year 1400, the countries in the temperate climate, which is Europe essentially, right, from Spain, Portugal, Italy, Germany, Belgium, France, Denmark, and all of those kind of countries, you would probably have realized that they come from a region of the planet which is scarce in resources. It has got very less biodiversity, very few species of animals, 3 months of snow cover, which means you can't do agriculture in those 3 months, and a lot of hardships because the winter months are extremely hard to survive. You have to burn fossil fuel. You have to burn wood to survive. Thus, these resource poor countries were the first ones to realize that there are some lands on the planet which have got a lot of biodiversity, which have got a lot of wood and biomass and so many other things. So why not go there and start trading with them? And that is what is called in economics as the mercantilist thought. So the mercantilist economic system of thinking actually influenced colonization. And the colonies were the countries in the tropical zone. So there were Mexico, Brazil, India, Africa, Indonesia, Thailand, Singapore, all those countries which are there in the tropical belt, which have got ample sunlight throughout the year, which have got a lot of rainfall, which have got lovely soil, which produce so much of biomass, and which has got an abundance of diversity of vegetation. These colonists came to these countries as a trader, and the rest is history. They started trading, they started capturing the local people, and they started taking away the resources from the colonies to their mother countries. And therefore this beautiful cartoon which was very famous at that time, Mother Country, and this you may realize is Queen Elizabeth, and there are all the colonies bringing gold and silver, foodstuff, raw materials. Mexico, the one single country, Mexico, Spain took away literally thousands of tons of silver from Mexico, right? Colonization explains the wealth of most of the nations of the world. One single factor, colonization, can explain why England is so rich,